Hello, Leo. This isn't just a video. This is a cosmic interruption, a sign, an echo, a whisper from the universe saying, enough. Have you felt it lately? A strange stillness beneath the noise? A quiet voice in your heart urging you to slow down, to stop pretending you're fine, to finally let someone, or something, see you again? If so, Leo, this message is for you. And it's not by chance that you're here. You see, there's a divine timing to everything, even the way a YouTube video finds its way to your screen. What you're about to experience isn't just a horoscope. It's a soul transmission. A remembrance. A portal back to the part of you that's been waiting patiently to rise, not louder, but truer. Because let's be real, you weren't born to be small. You weren't meant to apologize for your light, your truth, your fire. But somewhere along the way, someone convinced you that your light was too much. That your heart was too big. That your loyalty was too intense. And so you dimmed. You stepped back. You played safe. Not anymore. This video, this reading, this message, is your spiritual permission slip to be seen again, in the full, glorious, unapologetic light of who you are. Here at Eternal Mindfulness, we don't do surface-level astrology. We dive deep. We honor your wounds, we celebrate your power, and we create a sacred space where your soul feels safe to show up fully. So first, allow me to take a moment, from the deepest place in my heart, to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting this space with your energy. Every like, every comment, every subscription is not just a number, it's a pulse, a ripple, a vibration that expands this circle of healing and light we're building together. Your presence means more than you know. And I promise, Leo, you'll want to stay with me until the very end of today's journey. Because what the universe is about to reveal, it's not just guidance. It's not just insight. It's a turning point. A sacred reminder that no matter who tried to dim your flame, they could never touch the eternal fire you carry inside. So take a deep breath. Ground yourself. Feel the weight of your spirit settling back into your body. This is your moment. And if you feel that truth rising within you, if your heart is starting to remember, then let me know in the comments with an angel number that's been following you, or simply say, I'm ready to be seen again. Because you are. And you always have been. Let's begin. There comes a moment in every journey when pretending becomes heavier than simply being. For many Leos, that moment doesn't arrive with fanfare or a dramatic breaking point. It arrives in stillness, in the quiet ache of a smile worn too long, in the invisible fatigue of always showing up as the strong one. And right now, you may be standing on that invisible threshold between the role you've mastered and the truth you've postponed. Astrologically, the current energies suggest that Leo is experiencing a realignment, one that doesn't strip away your power, but redefines it from the inside out. This isn't about losing your light. It's about reclaiming the part of your light that doesn't require performance. You're not being asked to dim down. You're being invited to shine in a way that nourishes rather than depletes you. The reversed sun card in the tarot beautifully captures this nuance. It speaks of inner radiance concealed, not by darkness, but by exhaustion. This card doesn't say the light is gone, it says the light has been overworked, overpromised, and too often spent on things that no longer feel true. You've perhaps given too much to roles that ask you to lead without rest, inspire without being inspired, protect others without having space to feel protected yourself. In such times, the question isn't, who do others need me to be, but rather, what parts of me have I neglected in trying to be everything? That question, simple yet piercing, opens a doorway to something deeper than image, a return to presence. And presence doesn't perform. It just is. In a world that rewards visibility, Leos often carry the unspoken pressure to always be on. But even the sun sets. Even the flame must return to its source to burn brighter again. There's wisdom in knowing when to step back, not as a retreat but as a sacred realignment. Just like water takes the shape of its container, your spirit, too, needs space to move freely, not always contorted into what's expected. There's an old truth that says, what is false eventually breaks under the weight of its own illusion. And for you, dear Leo, the illusion that you must always be strong, always bold, always glowing, is beginning to crack. Not because you've failed, but because you're finally honest enough to seek peace over applause. When the roles you've played no longer align with who you are becoming, it's not a loss, it's an awakening. If your heart has been whispering that certain commitments feel hollow, or if the things that once gave you joy now leave you empty, that's not failure. That's clarity. That's your inner compass pointing you inward. And sometimes, the most courageous thing a lion can do is not to roar, but to listen. Now might be the time to pause and write down 3 things in your life that you're doing primarily for recognition, not love, not passion, but approval. Examine them gently, without judgment. What would happen if, for just 3 days, you stopped doing one of them? What space might open up? What deeper truth might arise? True strength isn't about keeping the spotlight on you, it's about being at peace when no one is watching. Because when your joy is no longer conditional on applause, your light becomes unstoppable. Let this be your practice, not a performance, not a project, but a soft, steady return to what was always real beneath the roles, you. Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't caused by betrayal or conflict, but by subtle suggestions that who you are is too much. You may not remember the exact moment, but you likely remember the feeling, when your joy made someone uncomfortable, when your enthusiasm was met with rolled eyes. Or when someone you cared about made you feel like your confidence was something to tone down. Those moments add up. Slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to turn the volume down on your own light. It often starts innocently. A suggestion to stay humble, a reminder to blend in, or a quiet glance of disapproval when you dare to express your excitement about something you love. And so you learn to shrink. To filter yourself. To internalize the message that standing tall is selfish, that shining brightly somehow casts shadows on others. But the truth is, light doesn't erase light, it amplifies it. Your glow isn't competition. It's inspiration. Leo, your essence is radiant by nature. In numerology, the number 1, the vibration most aligned with your sign, symbolizes beginnings, leadership, and originality. It's the spark that initiates, the fire that burns clean. But when repressed, that same energy can twist inward. What was once confidence becomes defensiveness. What was once leadership becomes performance. And what was once a pure expression of joy becomes a quiet echo of, "Is this okay?" This internal tension isn't vanity, it's a misalignment of energy. You were never meant to live in moderation when your soul was designed for expression. Just like a flower doesn't apologize for blooming, your light doesn't need permission. But years of external conditioning can distort this understanding. And that's what you're being asked to examine now, not with judgment, but with curiosity. There's a teaching that says, when we dull ourselves to make others more comfortable, we end up betraying not only ourselves, but also the potential growth of those around us. Because when someone is triggered by your confidence, it's not your brightness that causes the pain, it's their own disconnection from their inner light. Your visibility reminds them of something they've silenced in themselves. And while it's not your responsibility to fix their reaction, it's also not your duty to silence your soul to soothe their discomfort. Living authentically is not an act of ego, it's an act of courage. And it's one of the most generous things you can do. By standing fully in who you are, you give others permission to do the same. You become a mirror, a guide, not by instructing others but simply by being real. And in a world full of curated identities and emotional filters, that is sacred. Perhaps it's time to reclaim what was once labeled too much. Your laughter, your bold opinions, your desire to lead, your refusal to settle, these aren't flaws. They're reflections of a lion-hearted spirit that has been caged by small expectations for far too long. Try this. Write down one phrase that was used to make you feel smaller. Something someone said that made you question your power. Then, write your own truth beside it. For example, if you were told, "You always want to be the center of attention," you might respond, "I lead from presence, not for praise." And if you need somewhere to start, repeat this with me now. I was born to lead with my heart, and I never have to apologize for that. You don't need to dim so others can shine. You shine, and you light the way. Not every roar echoes strength. Sometimes, it's the silence that says the most, the quiet endurance, the steady smile, the calm that others lean on without realizing it's built on tired bones. Leo, you've spent a long time being the source of light and warmth for others. People naturally gravitate toward you, your energy is magnetic, your courage contagious, and your presence comforting. But in giving so much of yourself, who do you turn to when the fire dims inside you? There's a truth that's rarely spoken: the strong often suffer in solitude. Not because they lack support, but because the world has grown so used to them holding it all together, no one thinks to ask if they need holding too. For someone like you, asking for help can feel like betraying the image others have come to rely on. And yet, the longer you carry the weight without pause, the more disconnected you become from your own heart. Astrologically, Leo rules the heart, not just in anatomy, but in spirit. This is the sign of authentic expression, of courage born from vulnerability, and of generosity that flows from within. But when the heart is overextended without being replenished, it hardens, not out of malice, but out of quiet self-preservation. The symbol of the lion, proud and protective, forgets it is also a creature that needs rest, safety, and closeness. The Strength card in tarot doesn't just represent endurance or brute force, it reflects grace under pressure, emotional intelligence, and the subtle power of softness. True strength isn't rigid. It doesn't always have to lead. It allows for rest. It welcomes the need for care. It is brave enough to admit, I can't do this alone today. That honesty is its own kind of fire. It burns away the illusion of perfection and leaves behind something much more human and profound: connection. In one of the oldest teachings, there's an image of a lotus growing through the mud. Not in spite of the mud, but because of it. Just as the lotus can only bloom when it's anchored in the depth of the earth, your truest strength blooms when it's rooted in the reality of your own needs. Your emotions are not distractions from your purpose, they are bridges to it. It's easy to get caught in the idea that being dependable means never needing anything in return. But reciprocity is not weakness, it's wisdom. Just as the sun sets to give way for rest, your energy too must renew. And that renewal begins with one simple but courageous act: admitting where you truly are. Try this tomorrow morning. Look in the mirror, not to check how you appear, but to meet yourself again. Place your hand over your chest and say aloud, I am strong enough to say I'm tired. I am brave enough to ask for what I need. Then pause, breathe, and let the truth of that moment settle. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present, with yourself first, so that everything you give from here on out flows from fullness, not depletion. The fire in you is sacred, but it was never meant to burn alone. Let others see you, not just when you're shining, but when you're simply human. Vulnerability is not the opposite of strength. It is the doorway to real connection, and the foundation of the next version of you that's waiting to emerge. At some point, you may begin to notice that the effort to be impressive becomes exhausting. Not because you've lost your shine, but because your heart quietly yearns for something more than admiration. It wants to be understood. Leos often express love through their presence, their boldness, their warmth. There's a natural desire to uplift, to inspire, to leave an imprint. But when that expression is filtered through a need to be validated or chosen, it subtly shifts from empowerment to performance. And performance, no matter how dazzling, creates distance. True connection, the kind that settles into your bones, doesn't arrive when you're trying to be irresistible. It appears when you're willing to be real. Love that endures doesn't ask for stage lights. It asks for presence. And the beautiful paradox is, the more you drop the need to impress, the more magnetic you become. There is a quiet form of confidence that doesn't need to broadcast itself. It's the kind that can sit still, breathe deeply, and allow others to meet it without fanfare. This is the version of you that no longer fears being ordinary because it has learned that wholeness doesn't come from proving anything, it comes from accepting everything. The cracks, the quirks, the pauses between your strengths. This is where love lives, not in your ability to dazzle, but in your ability to stay with yourself without editing. Astrologically, Leo is ruled by the sun, the very source of light. But even the sun doesn't shine to prove its worth, it simply exists, and everything around it grows. When you begin to embody that same natural radiance, rooted in stillness rather than striving, you open the door for relationships that reflect your truth, not your projection. In the Lover's card of the tarot, the essence of choice is central. Love isn't just something that happens, it's something we choose, again and again, with presence and clarity. The Queen of Wands, your energetic match in this reading, embodies quiet power. She doesn't demand the spotlight follows her because her energy is centered, magnetic, and self-knowing. She doesn't chase love. She invites it by being fully herself. There is a teaching that speaks of the middle path, the space between chasing and withdrawing, between controlling and avoiding. In this space, love is no longer a transaction. It becomes an offering. When you are centered in your own worth, love that comes to you doesn't arrive because you convinced someone to stay. It stays because it resonates. Try this gentle exercise. Make a list of 3 things you truly appreciate about yourself that have nothing to do with achievements or appearance. Maybe it's your loyalty. Maybe it's the way you hold space for others. Maybe it's your curiosity. Whatever they are, write them down and keep them close. Then, every time you find yourself questioning your worth, return to this list. Read it out loud if you can. Not as a ritual of self-praise, but as a moment of honest recognition. The qualities you list there are the quiet truths that don't require applause to exist. You don't have to fight to be loved. You don't have to charm your way into someone's heart. The person meant for you will see you most clearly not when you're shining at your brightest, but when you're simply being, without effort. In that moment of quiet authenticity, something real begins. And real love? It doesn't need to be earned. It only needs to be received. Opportunities don't always arrive with grand entrances. Sometimes, they show up quietly, disguised as a soft conversation, a gentle shift in perspective, or a moment of stillness that feels unexpectedly right. As the energy begins to turn this week, something is aligning itself in your orbit, not through spectacle, but through subtle, steady resonance. It might be a person. It might be a path. But whatever it is, it won't demand your performance. It will respond to your truth. There's something powerful about recognizing that not everything meaningful needs to be loud. In fact, the most lasting things in life rarely are. What endures often begins like a whisper, not a trumpet. Like the way a candle glows steadily in a storm, it doesn't fight for attention, but it stays lit. That's the kind of opportunity unfolding now. One that doesn't need to convince you of its worth because its presence simply feels right. Not because it dazzles, but because it doesn't require you to be anything but yourself. The Knight of Cups paired with the 3 of Pentacles in Tarot speaks volumes here. The Knight invites you to move toward connection with emotional sincerity. He's not rushing. He's not chasing. He offers his presence from a place of calm confidence. The 3 of Pentacles adds another layer. It reminds you that growth happens through mutual effort, shared values, and aligned vision. These cards together signal that you're approaching something, or someone, that recognizes your inner work, your quiet consistency, and your integrity, not your accolades or the masks you wear. This is a moment to remember that only those who are grounded in themselves can recognize depth in others. Shallow waters may reflect, but they don't reveal. And right now, life is offering you an invitation to connect not from surface compatibility, but from shared authenticity. That means being willing to stay open, to show up as you are, even if your hands tremble. Especially if they tremble. Because when you offer your truth gently, it gives the right person or opportunity space to meet you where you truly live, not where you've performed. One of the most profound teachings in the philosophy of awareness is this: when we are fully present with what is, even the smallest encounter becomes a doorway. A conversation becomes a revelation. A step becomes a turning point. There's no need to force what's meant for you. But there is a responsibility to remain awake, to not overlook the humble beginnings of something real just because it doesn't match the vision you once clung to. So here's something to gently practice. Close your eyes and ask yourself, not what you want next, but what within you longs to be seen. Not by the world, but by you. Ask, what part of me is asking for love but hasn't been allowed to speak? Sit with that. Listen. Maybe it's the part of you that's always been too afraid to appear needy. Maybe it's the version of you that just wants to be held without explanation. Whatever it is, your ability to meet it, to acknowledge it, becomes the very key that unlocks the new doorway ahead. You don't need to chase this next chapter. You just need to be still enough to notice when it arrives. Because it won't come wrapped in validation or urgency. It will come with peace. And peace is the quiet signature of something real. When it knocks, you'll recognize it not by how loud it is, but by how deeply your heart softens in its presence. That's when you'll know. And that's when it's yours. And now, dear Leo, as we arrive at the close of this journey together, I want you to pause, not to look back with judgment, but to look inward with compassion. Everything you've explored today wasn't meant to change who you are. It was meant to gently remind you of what was never lost, your light. Your real light. The one that doesn't burn for approval, but glows quietly from truth. You've carried the weight of expectations for so long, yours, theirs, the world's. And maybe somewhere along the way, you forgot that you're not here to perform. You're here to live. Fully. Authentically. With fire when it rises, and softness when it calls. The universe isn't asking you to shine brighter or be stronger. It's simply whispering, be real. There's a quiet courage in choosing presence over perfection. In saying, I'm tired, when you're expected to lead. In saying, I need, when you're known for giving. In saying, this is me, even when you know it may not be what others want to hear. But that's the courage of Leo, not just to roar, but to be raw. To step into the light not because you need the world to see you, but because you refuse to keep hiding from yourself. So I invite you, in your own way, to take one small action today that honors who you really are. Maybe it's resting instead of pushing. Maybe it's expressing instead of suppressing. Maybe it's simply placing your hand over your heart and saying, I am allowed to exist, fully, without apology. What would shift in your life if you lived from that place, not just occasionally, but consistently? You already know what you need. You already know what's real. The only question that remains is, will you trust yourself enough to follow it? Will you allow your life to be guided not by expectation, but by alignment? And if this video stirred something within you, if a quiet part of your soul whispered, yes, then that's your sign. That's your green light. That's your sacred permission to stop shrinking and start standing. If you're ready to claim that, I invite you to comment below with the words, I allow myself to live fully, or simply share an angel number that's been calling to you. Let your presence here be more than silent watching. Let it be an act of anchoring. A way of saying, I'm here. I'm listening. And I'm ready. And if this message touched something deep in you, if it made you breathe a little deeper or cry a little softer, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Eternal Mindfulness channel, and share it with another Leo who may be holding it all together in silence. You never know, your act of sharing might be the moment someone else finally hears what they've been waiting for. Thank you for walking this path with me today. Thank you for being exactly who you are, even when the world tries to shape you into something else. The fire within you isn't here to impress. It's here to illuminate. So go on, Leo. Live as if your light matters. Because it does. Tremendously.